7 years into their marriage in Chicago, Emily and Daniel achieved the modern ideal. They had the high-rise apartment, the respected careers, and a curated social media presence that suggested a life of total harmony. But the interior of that apartment told a different story. As Daniel's hours at the office grew, the conversation at home evaporated. Physical proximity remained, but their shared life was being replaced by a deepening silence. This wasn't an overnight change. It began with Emily voicing her frustration over his late nights. When those complaints went unaddressed, she moved to pleading, trying to convince him that the success he was chasing shouldn't come at the expense of their time together. As Daniel's career climbed, Emily's attempts to reach him dropped. The more he leaned into his professional growth, the less she spoke up. That silence eventually became a permanent chasm. They lived under the same roof, separated by a growing distance neither acknowledged. By focusing entirely on external markers of achievement, Daniel had unintentionally drained the life out of his own home. He was building a future for a partnership that was currently starving for presence. The tension peaked during a heavy Chicago blizzard. The weather was a physical barrier, mirroring the emotional one that had already formed between them. Inside the apartment, Emily made one final effort. She prepared Daniel's favorite meal, lit candles, and put on music, attempting to recreate the intimacy they had lost to his schedule. She sent a text that cut through years of silence, simply asking him to come home early because she missed him. At that same moment, Daniel was miles away in a boardroom. He was surrounded by colleagues, focused on a project that felt more urgent than a text message from his wife. He saw the message, felt the pull of his home, but ultimately locked his phone. He told himself he would address her needs once the work was done. As the hours passed, the music stopped and the dinner grew cold. Emily sat in the dark, watching the candles burn down to nothing while the snow continued to pile up outside the window. Daniel believed he was just delaying a conversation. In reality, he was leaving Emily to navigate her isolation alone during a moment when she was most desperate for him to show up. Daniel finally pulled into his building at 11:47 p.m. He had finished his work, but he was returning to a home that felt fundamentally different than the one he left that morning. The apartment was silent and dark. The music was gone, the table was cold, and for the first time in 7 years, the space felt truly empty. The quiet was broken when a neighbor met him in the hall to tell him that an ambulance had taken Emily away. She had collapsed in the kitchen while he was still at the office. At the hospital, the doctors explained that this wasn't a sudden illness. Emily had been hiding health problems for months, her body finally succumbing to the cumulative weight of chronic stress and physical exhaustion. Daniel had been so focused on the logistics of his career that he had missed the physical deterioration of the person closest to him. The life he was working for had nearly cost him the person he was working it for. Sitting by her hospital bed, Daniel confronted a reality he had ignored for years. He looked at the woman who had stayed by his side, seeing the toll his absence had taken. He remembered Emily had been his primary support long before the promotions and the high-rise. She had believed in him during his unemployment and funded the very dreams he used as an excuse to ignore her. She told him that the financial security he was chasing meant nothing to her. She only ever wanted his presence. That realization changed Daniel's priorities overnight. He cleared his calendar, canceled his business trips, and stepped away from professional obligations. They eventually left Chicago behind, moving into a small cabin in Wisconsin, trading the noise of the city for a quiet life by a lake, where the only schedule that mattered was the one they shared. They spent their days on the simple acts they had neglected for years, sharing coffee at sunrise and preparing meals together. These small, consistent moments of daily connection rebuilt their trust, leading Emily to say that they were finally experiencing a real marriage. Daniel finally understood that professional achievement is a hollow metric. Success is only meaningful if the person you love is still there to share it with you when you finally reach the top.